The night sky above Aralon carried a stillness that felt unnatural. The twin moons, usually bright enough to turn the desert silver, were wrapped behind a thick blanket of dust. The people of the outer settlement said the dust was rising because the Empire of Helion had started mining deeper than ever, tearing open the planet's crust in search of a rare energy mineral that powered their war machines. But for Kade Riven, the sky looked like a warning. He stood on a ridge at the edge of his settlement and watched the faint glow of Helion patrol ships drift across the horizon. Their blue engines pulsed like slow, cold heartbeats. Kade's home sat far from the inner cities, where the Empire tightened its control. Life in the outer dunes was simple, and Kade would have been content to stay there if history hadn't reached out to him in a way he never expected. He grew up believing he was ordinary. He fixed broken water collectors, hunted desert reptiles for food, and helped his uncle repair scrap tech brought in by scavengers. Nothing about his life hinted that he carried something rare. But he had always sensed things before they happened. He didn't talk about it. People in the outer dunes didn't trust anything they couldn't explain. He remembered a moment from childhood when he caught a falling tool before it hit the ground, even though his back had been turned. His uncle stared at him, uneasy, and told him to keep his hands steady and his head down. The Empire hunted people with gifts like that, calling them anomalies. Some said the Empire tortured them, some said they trained them as weapons. Kade tried to bury whatever lived inside him, but it never fully went away. On this particular night, he sensed something coming. Not danger exactly, but a shift, like the desert wind changing direction right before a storm. He felt it in his chest, a soft pressure that almost pulled him toward the empty plains. He didn't know whether to follow it or ignore it. Before he could. The cliff stairs were narrow and worn, carved by hands long gone, but they gave Kade and Sera a temporary advantage. The Helion soldiers hesitated at the base, unwilling to follow too closely through the twisting passage. Pulse bolts sizzled in the distance, kicking up dust, but for now the immediate danger was behind them. Kade's chest still burned with the aftershock of his first uncontrolled surge. He leaned against a jagged rock, panting, and tried to understand what had just happened. The force he had released, it wasn't something he had ever consciously tried to do. It was like the desert itself had lent him strength, like the air and sand and stone had responded to the urgency in his blood. Sera studied him, her gaze intense yet calm. "It's not magic," she said, sensing his thoughts. "It's energy. The same energy the Luminari call the Flux. It exists everywhere, connecting everything. Some feel it, some can channel it. She paused, searching for the words. You are one of the rare ones born to channel it naturally." Kade shook his head, disbelief and fear warring with a strange surge of pride. "I've felt it, sometimes. But never like that. I didn't even know what I was doing." Sera nodded slowly. "Neither did I the first time. It's why we hide. The Empire hunts anyone with Flux abilities. They fear what it can do to their control. But you didn't hide. You acted." The canyon twisted again, leading them through narrow passages that snaked between high walls of sandstone. Sunlight poured down in some places, painting golden streaks across the dusty floor. The air smelled faintly of minerals and old earth. Kade kept his pulse steady, forcing himself to move forward, yet he couldn't stop noticing how the energy within him hummed faintly, like it had recognized Sera's presence. Hours passed, or maybe it was minutes, the desert distorted time. When they reached a plateau, the terrain opened into a vast expanse dotted with jagged rock formations. In the center. The light inside the vault wrapped around Kade and Sera like a living presence. It wasn't just illumination, it was a vibration, a resonance that seemed to reach into every corner of his mind. Kade felt his heartbeat sync with it, the pressure in his chest now a steady hum guiding him deeper. Sera moved confidently ahead, despite her injury, as though she had been inside this place countless times before. The vault's interior was unlike anything Kade had ever imagined, walls of translucent crystal that bent light into shimmering patterns, corridors that seemed to stretch farther than their physical dimensions allowed, and a faint energy humming in the air, reacting to his presence. The sphere in Sera's pack pulsed in rhythm with the vault. Kade reached for it instinctively, feeling that the key to navigating the labyrinth lay in his connection to it. As he held it, the hum of the flux inside him strengthened, guiding his movements and sharpening his senses. Every step was purposeful, every choice of direction intuitive. He realized for the first time that the power within him wasn't random, it was a tool, a language that the vault itself understood. Sera stopped before a large chamber, the walls carved with symbols depicting the history of the Luminari Order. Figures in flowing robes, wielding energy in precise gestures, were etched into crystal. Light moved along the carvings, highlighting battles, discoveries, and ceremonies. Kade could almost feel the emotions embedded in the crystal, the pride, the grief, the hope of a civilization now nearly erased. They wanted this knowledge preserved, Sera said quietly. Not for themselves, but for those who could bear the responsibility. The chamber opened into a vast central hall. In its center, a pedestal rose from the floor, glowing faintly. The sphere seemed to pull toward it, vibrating in his hand. Kade stepped closer, aware that this moment marked the first real test of his connection with the flux. The air thickened. The night air on the plateau was still, but Kade could feel the tension of the galaxy pressing down on them. The Helion forces had set up searchlights and scanning drones, and their patrols circled the cliffs like predators. Every step forward had to be measured, deliberate. Kade felt the flux thrumming through him, steady now, no longer raw and unpredictable. He had learned to control it, channel it, make it an extension of his own will. Yet even with that control, he understood that power alone would not guarantee survival. Strategy, patience, and courage would be just as critical. Sera led him toward the canyon network that opened into the northern highlands, a region the Empire considered impassable. The terrain was treacherous, sheer cliffs, narrow ridges, and sudden drops. But it was the only path that could give them a chance to regroup. Along the way, Kade sensed the flux guiding him, revealing safe passages, hidden ledges, and subtle currents of energy that could shield them from detection. The connection to the vault, to the ancient Luminari, had sharpened his perception. Every rock, every gust of wind, every shadow seemed to carry information. He realized that he was no longer just reacting, he was anticipating. Hours passed. Helion patrols had intensified, their search expanding into the highlands. Kade and Sera moved swiftly, climbing higher, resting briefly only when the light of the twin moons gave cover. As they reached a ridge overlooking a valley filled with jagged peaks, Sera paused, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the sphere. "This is where we make our stand," she said. "The Empire will come, but we can set a trap. With your abilities and the knowledge you now hold, we can turn their strength against them." Kade nodded, a sense of determination replacing the exhaustion that had gripped him earlier. The valley below would be the site of their confrontation. Using the terrain and the flux, he could manipulate the environment, rockfalls,